A U.S. sergeant had 7 minutes to stop his own captain from selling Nazi weapons that could kill millions. October 12, 1944. The Hurtgen Forest, Germany. Sergeant Jack Brennan's hand froze mid-air as he reached for his canteen. Something was wrong. The forest had gone silent, no birds, no wind, nothing. Just the breathing of 12 American soldiers crouched in the fog-choked underbrush. Then he heard it, the metallic click of a rifle bolt. German. Close. Too close. Down. Brennan screamed, but the words were swallowed by the roar of machine gun fire that erupted from 3 sides. Trees exploded into splinters. Private Tommy Hayes, just 19 years old, caught 3 rounds before he could even scream. Corporal Eddie Rourke grabbed his rifle and returned fire blindly into the gray wall of fog. They'd walked straight into a kill zone. The trap springs shut. This wasn't supposed to happen. Intelligence had said the forest was clear, that German forces had pulled back to defend the Siegfried Line 2 miles east. But intelligence was dead wrong. Brennan hit the ground hard as bullets chewed through the foliage above his head. His men were scattered, pinned down, dying. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw muzzle flashes, German MG-42s, at least 3 of them, positioned in a perfect L-shaped ambush. Fall back. Brennan roared, but there was nowhere to go. Behind them, more gunfire erupted. They were surrounded. Private Danny Costa tried to run and made it exactly 4 steps before a sniper's bullet punched through his helmet. He dropped without a sound. Brennan's mind raced. 12 men had entered this forest. In 30 seconds, he'd lost 3. The Germans had let them walk right into a prepositioned killbox, camouflaged machine gun nests, snipers in the trees, and blocking positions on their escape routes. This wasn't a patrol stumbling into contact. This was calculated. Someone had known they were coming. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold World War II stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat. The radio that sealed their fate. Brennan crawled through the mud toward his radioman, Corporal Mike Sullivan, who was pressed against a fallen oak tree, blood streaming from a gash across his forehead. "Get battalion on the horn!" Brennan shouted over the deafening gunfire. Sullivan yanked the radio handset to his ear, twisted the frequency dial, and his face went white. "Sarge, the radio's been sabotaged." Brennan grabbed the handset. Dead air. No static. Nothing. Someone had cut the internal wiring. This wasn't equipment failure. This was deliberate. One of his own men had destroyed their only link to rescue. Brennan's eyes swept across his squad, men he'd trained with, fought beside, trusted with his life. One of them was a traitor. But there was no time to figure out who. Another burst of machine gun fire tore through the trees, and Sergeant Frank Kowalski, their squad's veteran, 15 years in the army, let out a grunt of pain. He'd been hit in the shoulder. "Medic!" Brennan screamed, but their medic, Private Lewis, was already down, clutching his stomach, blood pooling beneath him. A decision that could kill them all. Brennan had 2 choices, both bad. Stay pinned down and get slaughtered one by one, or charge the machine gun nests in a desperate bid to break through. Military doctrine said never assault a fortified position head-on. It was suicide. But staying here was guaranteed death. He looked at Rourke, who was frantically reloading his M1 Garand. At Private Henry Jackson, a farm kid from Iowa who'd never fired a shot in anger until today. At Kowalski, gritting his teeth through the pain, still clutching his rifle with one good arm. "Listen up!" Brennan shouted. "We go forward or we die here. When I give the signal, we rush the center gun emplacement. Covering fire from the flanks. Move fast, shoot straight, and don't stop for anything." Rourke stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Sarge, that's a goddamn death sentence." "So is sitting here." Brennan snapped. He pulled a grenade from his belt, checked the pin. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd led men into bad situations before, but never anything like this. If he was wrong, if there were more Germans than he thought, if the machine gun fire was too heavy, they'd all be dead in seconds. But the alternative was watching his men get picked off one by one until the Germans moved in to finish the survivors. The charge into hell. Brennan didn't give himself time to think. Now, he roared, yanked the grenade pin, and hurled it toward the muzzle flash of the nearest MG-42. The explosion ripped through the forest, dirt and shrapnel flying. He surged to his feet, rifle up, and charged straight into the smoke. Behind him, Rourke, Jackson, and Kowalski followed, screaming as they ran. Bullets snapped past Brennan's head so close he felt the heat. He fired from the hip, stitching rounds into the German position. A shadowy figure rose from behind sandbags. Brennan shot him twice in the chest. Then he saw it, a second machine gun nest 10 yards to the left, swiveling toward him. Time slowed. The German gunner's finger tightened on the trigger. Brennan dove behind a tree just as the MG-42 opened up, bark and wood chips exploding around him. He wasn't going to make it. The man who saved them, or betrayed them. A rifle cracked from Brennan's left. The German gunner jerked backward, blood spraying from his neck. Brennan spun around. Standing in the fog, rifle still smoking, was Private Anthony Vitale, the quietest man in the squad, a New York City mechanic who barely spoke unless spoken to. Vitale worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing, and scanned for more targets. His face was blank, emotionless, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Brennan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Vitale had just saved his life. But Vitale had also been near the radio earlier that morning. Alone. For 5 minutes. Move! Vitale shouted, already advancing toward the third machine gun nest. Brennan had no choice but to follow. They pushed forward together, firing in short, controlled bursts. The Germans were pulling back now, retreating deeper into the forest. Brennan's squad, what was left of it, pressed the advantage, driving through the kill zone. But as they cleared the ambush site, Brennan couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at his gut. Someone in his squad had cut that radio. Someone had told the Germans where they'd be. And if he didn't figure out who, and fast, none of them would make it out of this forest alive. The forest that held secrets. As the gunfire faded and the adrenaline began to ebb, Brennan counted heads. 8 men left out of 12. 4 dead. They'd survived the ambush, but barely. He looked at each soldier's face, Rourke, Jackson, Kowalski, Vitale, and the others, and wondered which one of them had signed their death warrant. Sarge, Rourke panted, reloading his rifle with trembling hands. What the hell just happened? Brennan didn't answer. Because deep in the Hurtgen forest, surrounded by enemy soldiers and cut off from command, he just realized something far worse than the ambush itself. The Germans hadn't been trying to kill them all. They'd been trying to capture someone. And whoever that someone was, they were still in his squad. Brennan's hands shook as he knelt beside Private Lewis's body. The medic's eyes stared blankly at the canopy above, his medical bag soaked with blood. Brennan reached to close the kid's eyes, then froze. Something was wrong. Lewis had been shot in the stomach, but there was another wound. A small puncture mark on his neck, almost invisible beneath the collar of his uniform. No blood around it. Made before the ambush started. Brennan's throat went dry. Lewis hadn't died from German bullets. He'd been murdered by someone in the squad. Before the shooting even began. Sarge, we gotta move. Rourke hissed from behind a tree, scanning the fog-shrouded forest. Those Krauts could circle back any second. Brennan stood slowly, his mind racing. The sabotage radio. The perfectly positioned ambush. Now a murdered medic. This wasn't just a spy in his ranks. This was an operation. Someone had orchestrated this entire nightmare, and they'd started by eliminating the one man who could save wounded soldiers, making sure anyone who got shot would die without medical help. Brutal. Calculated. Professional. The accusation that split them apart. "Everyone, weapons down," Brennan commanded, his voice cold as winter steel. "Now." 8 sets of eyes locked onto him. Nobody moved. "I said now." Brennan raised his M1 Garand, aiming at the center of the group. Slowly, reluctantly, the men lowered their rifles. Rourke's face twisted with confusion and fear. Jackson looked like he might cry. Vitaly remained expressionless, those dark eyes watching everything and revealing nothing. "One of you is working for the Germans," Brennan stated flatly. "One of you cut our radio. One of you killed Lewis before this ambush started. And one of you is going to talk, or I start shooting." The forest seemed to hold its breath. "You're crazy, Sarge." Rourke exploded. "We just fought our way through that killbox together. We're on the same side." "Are we?" Brennan shot back. He pointed at Lewis's corpse. "Check his neck. That's not a bullet wound. That's an ice pick or a stiletto. Military precision. Somebody stuck him before the first shot was fired, knew he'd bleed out during the chaos, and nobody would notice how he really died." Private Jackson stared at the body, then stumbled backward and vomited. Kowalski, still clutching his wounded shoulder, spat blood and growled, "This is bullshit. We don't have time for paranoia." "We don't have time for a traitor either," Brennan countered. His finger tightened on the trigger. "So here's how this works. Everyone empties their packs. Everything. If I find German papers, codes, maps, or anything that doesn't belong, you die right here." The search that revealed nothing, and everything. One by one, the soldiers dumped their gear onto the muddy ground. Standard issue equipment. Rations. Ammunition. Personal effects. Letters from home. Photographs of sweethearts and families. Nothing unusual. Nothing incriminating. Except for one problem, everyone's gear was clean. Too clean. "Where's the mud?" Brennan asked suddenly, kicking at Private Jackson's pack. "We've been crawling through this forest for 2 hours. Everything should be covered in dirt and debris. But Jackson's pack looks like it was wiped down this morning." Jackson's face went pale. I just like to keep my stuff clean, Sarge. You know me. I'm always." "Strip," Brennan ordered. "What?" "Your uniform. Take it off. Now." Jackson's hands trembled as he unbuttoned his jacket. Underneath, his undershirt was soaked with sweat. But there was something else. A thin leather cord around his neck, disappearing beneath the fabric. Brennan grabbed it and yanked hard. The cord snapped. Dangling from the broken cord was a small metal capsule, the kind used by intelligence operatives to carry microfilm or poison pills. The forest exploded with accusations. Rourke swung his rifle toward Jackson. Kowalski lunged forward with his knife. "You son of a bitch!" Rourke screamed. "You got Tommy and Danny killed. You sold us out." "No!" Jackson shrieked, backing away, hands raised. "That's not mine. I swear to God, that's not mine. Someone planted it on me. The execution nobody saw coming." Brennan's mind worked overtime. The capsule was damning evidence, but Jackson's terror looked genuine. A trained German agent wouldn't panic like this. They'd stay calm, stick to their cover story, maybe even try to escape. Jackson was just a terrified farm kid who'd pissed himself. Which meant someone had planted that capsule on him. But who? And when? "Back away from him," Brennan ordered Rourke and Kowalski. "Nobody touches Jackson until I figure this out." That's when Vitaly moved. 1 second he was standing motionless at the edge of the group. The next, his hand flashed to his belt, pulled a concealed pistol, a German Walther P-38, and shot Private Henry Jackson directly through the forehead. The crack of the gunshot echoed through the trees. Jackson crumpled like a puppet with cut strings, dead before he hit the ground. Vitaly swung the pistol toward Brennan. "Don't," Vitaly said quietly. His voice was different now. No accent. No emotion. Pure professional coldness. "Drop the rifle, Sergeant." Slowly. Brennan's heart hammered. Vitaly. It had been Vitaly all along. The quiet mechanic from Brooklyn who never caused trouble, never drew attention. The perfect cover. "You're aware," Brennan breathed. "German military intelligence." Vitaly smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Close. SD, Sicherheitsdienst. I've been embedded in your unit for 6 months, Sergeant. Feeding Berlin everything about your division's movements, supply lines, command structure. This ambush was supposed to capture you alive for interrogation. But you fought better than expected. So now we adapt." The truth that turned everything upside down. "Why Jackson?" Brennan asked, stalling for time. His rifle was lowered but not dropped. Rourke and Kowalski were frozen, afraid to move with that Walther aimed at their sergeant. "Insurance," Vitaly explained, his gun never wavering. If anyone survived and started asking questions, they'd find the capsule on Jackson and assume he was the spy. "Clean exit for me." "But you had to be clever, Sergeant. You saw through it." "The radio," Brennan said. "You cut it while we were setting up camp this morning." "Correct. And I killed your medic because wounded men slow down escape attempts. I needed you pinned, desperate, exactly where I wanted you." Vitaly took a step closer. "Now here's what happens next. You're going to order your men to surrender their weapons and come with me. There's a German patrol 200 yards north waiting for my signal. You cooperate, you live. You resist." He gestured at Jackson's corpse. "You join him." Brennan's mind raced through options. Vitaly had the drop on him. The German was too far away to rush, too well trained to miss. If Brennan tried anything, he'd die. His men would die. Game over. Unless. "One question," Brennan said. "How'd you know we'd be in this exact section of forest today?" "I only got those orders from Captain Mills at 0600 this morning." "You couldn't have positioned an ambush that fast." For the first time, Vitaly hesitated. Just a flicker of uncertainty in those cold eyes. "Unless," Brennan continued, his voice hardening, "someone higher up the chain gave you the orders before I even received them. Someone in our own command structure. Someone who wanted this squad eliminated. The betrayal inside the betrayal." Vitaly's expression shifted, not fear, but realization. He'd been played too. "Captain Mills," Brennan said, pieces clicking into place. "He's the one, isn't he? He sent us into this forest knowing we'd be ambushed. But why? What's he trying to hide?" Before Vitaly could respond, a new sound cut through the forest, the metallic clank of tank treads. But not German. American. M4 Shermans, at least 3 of them, crashing through the underbrush from the west. Vitaly's head snapped toward the noise. His carefully controlled expression finally cracked. "That's impossible. There are no American armor units in this sector." The first shell hit 30 yards away, obliterating a cluster of trees in a massive fireball. The concussion wave knocked everyone to the ground. Brennan rolled, grabbed his rifle, and came up shooting. Vitaly dove behind a boulder, returning fire. The Walther barked twice, one round punched through Kowalski's throat, dropping the veteran in a spray of arterial blood. "Scatter!" Brennan roared at his remaining men. Rourke grabbed Jackson's rifle and sprinted into the fog. The Shermans kept coming, main guns firing, machine guns chattering. But they weren't shooting at the Germans. They were shooting at Brennan's squad. The impossible choice. Brennan pressed himself against a tree as a .50 caliber round shredded the bark inches from his head. Nothing made sense. American tanks were slaughtering American soldiers. Vitali was supposed to be his enemy, but those Shermans were trying to kill both of them. Captain Mills had sent them into this ambush, but why would American command want their own men dead? Unless this forest held something so valuable, so dangerous, that everyone who discovered it had to be eliminated. Through the smoke and chaos, Brennan saw Vitali making a break for the northern tree line, toward where he'd claimed the German patrol was waiting. Brennan had seconds to decide, chase the spy who'd murdered his men, or find cover before those Shermans turned him into paste. He chose option 3. Brennan sprinted toward the tanks. It was insane. Suicidal. But if American armor was out here killing American soldiers, somebody was giving orders. And Brennan was going to find out who, even if he had to climb onto that lead Sherman and drag the tank commander out by his throat. He ran through a hail of machine gun fire, bullets snapping past his ears. 50 yards. 40. 30. The lead Sherman's turret swiveled toward him, the main gun depressing, preparing to fire point blank. Brennan dove into a shell crater as the cannon roared. The world turned white, then black, then red. His ears rang. He couldn't hear. Couldn't think. Could barely see. But through the smoke and fire and blood, he saw something that made his entire reality fracture. The Sherman's hatch opened. A figure climbed out. It was Captain Raymond Mills. And he was smiling. Brennan's vision swam as he stared up from the crater. Captain Raymond Mills stood atop the Sherman's turret like a conqueror surveying his kingdom, the firelight dancing across his face. This was the same officer who'd pinned medals on Brennan's chest after Normandy. The same man who'd shared whiskey and stories about his daughters back in Pennsylvania. The same leader who'd promised to bring every soldier home. Sergeant Brennan. Mills called out cheerfully, as if they'd bumped into each other at a church social. I have to admit, I didn't think you'd make it this far. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. Brennan's hand found his rifle, but his body wouldn't cooperate. The explosion had rattled every bone in his body. Blood trickled from his nose and ears. He tried to speak, but only managed to croak. Mills climbed down from the tank with practiced ease, pulling a .45 pistol from his holster. 2 more soldiers emerged from the other Shermans, but they weren't wearing standard American uniforms. Their insignia had been stripped away. No unit patches. No identification. Ghost soldiers. You want to know why, don't you? Mills said, approaching the crater. Why I sent you into that ambush. Why I'm cleaning up loose ends with American armor. Why good men like Kowalski and Hayes and Lewis had to die. He crouched at the crater's edge, close enough that Brennan could see the madness glittering in his eyes. Because you found it, Sergeant. You and your squad stumbled onto something that could end this war, or burn the entire world to ash. The bunker that shouldn't exist. 3 days ago, Mills continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, a French resistance scout reported something impossible. A Nazi research facility in these woods, built before the invasion, supposedly abandoned when the Wehrmacht pulled back. But it wasn't abandoned, Brennan. It was waiting. He pulled a photograph from his jacket and tossed it into the crater. Brennan's shaking hand grabbed it. The image showed a concrete bunker half buried in the forest floor, camouflaged so perfectly it looked like part of the landscape. German markings on the entrance. And something else, hazard symbols Brennan had never seen before. Skull and crossbones, but wrong. Twisted. Nerve agents, Mills explained. Not the crude mustard gas from the last war. This is next-generation chemical warfare. Odorless. Invisible. A single canister could kill everyone in a 5-mile radius within minutes. The Nazis stockpiled enough here to wipe out London, Paris, and Moscow combined. Brennan's blood turned to ice. Then why the hell aren't we securing it? Why are you? Because I already did, Mills interrupted, his smile widening. I secured it for myself. For the people I really work for. And your squad, brave, loyal, too damn curious for your own good, walked right past that bunker yesterday afternoon. Private Costa saw the entrance. Started asking questions. So I activated my backup plan. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Mills had orchestrated everything. Sent Brennan's squad into the ambush to silence them. Used Vitali as a scapegoat. And when that failed, brought in the tanks to finish the job. You're selling it, Brennan rasped. Selling Nazi weapons to the highest bidder. Mills laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that made Brennan's skin crawl. Selling? Oh, Sergeant, you think too small. I'm reshaping the post-war world. When Germany falls, and it will, there'll be a power vacuum. Russia, America, Britain, all scrambling for dominance. Whoever controls this technology controls everything. And I made sure the right people know what I have. The gunshot that changed the game. A rifle cracked from the tree lean. Mills's head snapped sideways, a chunk of his ear disappearing in a spray of blood. He screamed and dove behind the Sherman as bullets tore through the air. His ghost soldiers returned fire immediately, their machine guns raking the forest. But Brennan recognized that rifle report. M1 Garand. American. One of his men was still alive. Mills pressed his hand against his bleeding ear, his face contorted with rage. Kill whoever's shooting, he roared at his soldiers. I want them dead. Now. Brennan saw his chance. While Mills was distracted, he rolled out of the crater and crawled through the mud toward the tree lean, every muscle screaming in protest. Machine gun rounds chewed up the ground around him, but he kept moving. 50 feet. 40. 30. Another Garand shot. One of Mills's soldiers clutched his chest and toppled backward off the Sherman. The remaining ghost soldier swiveled his .50 caliber toward the muzzle flash and opened up, turning an entire section of forest into splinters. Brennan reached the trees and collapsed behind a moss-covered log. His vision cleared enough to see who was shooting, Corporal Eddie Rourke, positioned in a sniper's nest 20 yards to his left, working his rifle bolt like a machine. The kid had survived. Somehow, impossibly, Rourke had survived. Sarge. Rourke hissed without taking his eyes off the tanks. The hell is happening? Mills is dirty. Brennan gasped. He's after something in a bunker, chemical weapons, trying to sell them. Yeah, I figured that part out when he started shooting at us with our own goddamn tanks. Rourke fired again, the round sparking off the Sherman's armor. What's the play? Brennan's tactical mind kicked into gear despite the pain. 2 of them against Mills and at least one experienced gunner with a tank-mounted .50 cal. Bad odds. Suicidal odds. But Mills had made one critical mistake. He'd told Brennan where the bunker was. The race to ground zero. We go for the bunker, Brennan decided. If Mills wants it that badly, it's our only leverage. We get there first, we can threaten to destroy it. Rourke stared at him like he'd grown a second head. That's your plan? Run toward the Nazi death factory? You got a better idea? Yeah, we run away from the tanks and the chemical weapons and the psychotic captain. Another burst from the .50 cal shredded the tree above their heads. The decision was made for them. Move! Brennan roared, and they sprinted deeper into the forest, abandoning their position. Behind them, the Sherman's engine growled to life, tracks churning through the undergrowth. Mills's voice boomed through a loudspeaker mounted on the tank. You can't hide, Brennan. This forest is 4 square miles and I have all day. Surrender now and I'll make it quick. Brennan and Rourke ran in the direction Mills had indicated in the photograph, northeast, toward the densest part of the forest where ancient oaks grew so thick the sunlight barely penetrated. If the bunker was camouflaged as well as Mills claimed, they'd need to search carefully. They didn't have time to search carefully. The Sherman crashed through the forest behind them like a mechanical dinosaur, crushing everything in its path. Trees that had stood for centuries splintered like matchsticks. The .50 cal fired in controlled bursts, tracking their movement through the foliage. There! Rourke shouted, pointing at a depression in the earth ahead, too geometric to be natural, too overgrown to be recent. They slid down the embankment and found it, a reinforced concrete entrance, barely visible beneath decades of moss and ivy. Nazi eagles carved into the frame, half eroded but unmistakable. The door was steel, rusted but intact. A keypad lock next to it, still functional despite the years. Military-grade security. Can you crack it? Brennan asked desperately. Rourke pulled out his combat knife and jammed it into the seam. Does it look like I'm a safecracker? The Sherman appeared at the top of the embankment, its main gun swiveling toward them. The door that opened to hell. Brennan grabbed a grenade from his belt, pulled the pin, and jammed it into the keypad lock. Run! He and Rourke dove around the corner of the bunker entrance just as the grenade detonated. The explosion blew the keypad apart and, miraculously, popped the door's locking mechanism. The steel door groaned open on corroded hinges, revealing darkness beyond. They plunged inside as the Sherman fired. The shell hit the bunker's exterior wall, reinforced concrete absorbing most of the impact, but chunks of masonry rained down behind them. The door slammed shut, sealing them in absolute darkness. Brennan fumbled for his flashlight, clicked it on. The beam revealed a nightmare. They stood in a concrete corridor lined with thick glass windows. Behind each window, storage racks. On those racks, dozens of cylindrical canisters, each marked with German text and those twisted skull and crossbones symbols. Some of the canisters had cracked open, their contents leaked across the floor in dried chemical stains. Jesus Christ, Rourke whispered. There's enough here to kill everyone. Every living thing for miles. Deeper in the bunker, lights flickered on automatically, emergency power, still functional after all these years. The corridor extended forward into additional chambers. And at the far end, Brennan saw something that made his blood run cold. A second exit. Already open. Someone else was in here with them. The enemy of my enemy. Footsteps echoed from the darkness ahead. Slow. Deliberate. A figure emerged into the corridor's dim light, and Brennan's finger tightened on his rifle trigger. It was Vitaly. The German spy. Bleeding from a wound in his side, his Walther pistol hanging loose in one hand. But he wasn't aiming it at them. We have a problem, Vitaly said in that same emotionless voice, but there was something different now. Something almost human. Fear. You're damn right we have a problem, Rourke snarled, raising his rifle. You killed our guys. And Mills is about to kill all of us, Vitaly interrupted, nodding toward the entrance they'd just come through. That door won't hold against a tank shell. Maybe 2 more minutes before he breaches. When he does, he'll have access to 73 canisters of sarin variant compound the Nazis were developing. Each one 10 times more lethal than anything currently in existence. Why the hell should we trust you? Brennan demanded. Vitaly met his eyes. For the first time, there was no deception there. Just cold, brutal honesty. Because I was sent to destroy this facility. Not steal it. Destroy it. Berlin doesn't want this technology falling into Allied hands, and they definitely don't want it falling into the hands of a rogue American captain selling to the black market. Mills is a threat to everyone. German, American, civilian. Everyone. Another shell slammed into the bunker entrance. The walls shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. So what are you proposing? Brennan asked. Vitaly pulled a small detonator from his jacket. I placed charges throughout the bunker when I arrived. Enough to collapse the entire structure and bury these weapons forever. But I need time to activate the sequence. And Mills needs to die before he can call in reinforcements. Rourke laughed bitterly. You want us to go back out there and fight a tank? That's suicide. Yes, Vitaly agreed simply. But it's the only way to ensure this poison never sees daylight. The impossible alliance. Brennan looked at the canisters lining the walls. At the twisted Nazi symbols. At the potential for mass death contained in this concrete tomb. Then he looked at Vitaly, the enemy who'd killed his men, who'd betrayed everything Brennan stood for. And he made a choice he'd regret for the rest of his life. How long do you need? Brennan asked. 5 minutes to set the charges. Another 2 to reach minimum safe distance. Then you've got 7 minutes. Starting now. Brennan turned to Rourke. You stay here. Cover Vitaly. If he tries anything, I shoot him in the face, Rourke finished. Got it. Vitaly nodded once, no gratitude, no emotion, just acknowledgement of a tactical necessity. He disappeared into the bunker's depths, his footsteps fading into darkness. Brennan checked his rifle. 3 rounds left. Plus 1 grenade. Against a Sherman tank and an unknown number of Mills's ghost soldiers. Perfect. He moved toward the damaged entrance, where daylight was beginning to filter through the cracks Mills's shells had created. Through the gaps, he could see the tank repositioning for another shot. And standing on the turret, fresh bandages on his ruined ear, was Captain Raymond Mills. Brennan. Mills shouted. I know you're in there. Come out and I promise you a quick death. Hell, I'll even write your family a nice letter about how you died a hero. Brennan took a deep breath, kicked open what remained of the door, and stepped into the killing zone. How about instead, he called back, rifle aimed at Mills's center mass, you come down here and we settle this like soldiers. No tanks. No tricks. Just you and me. Mills threw back his head and laughed, a sound that echoed through the forest like breaking glass. Oh, Sergeant, he said, pulling his .45 pistol. You have no idea what you've just agreed to. And that's when the rest of Mills's soldiers emerged from the trees. Not 2. Not 3. 20 men. All armed. All aiming at Brennan. And every single one of them was wearing a German uniform.